You have to have courage to do something wrong. John Singer Sargent. I think this quote is something good to meditate on because you want to think about that during the drawing portion of your work. The drawing is an important time to explore shapes, forms, relationships between the forms. You want to do this in the beginning, the underpainting. It's important to do this because mistakes can be corrected very easily, simply just by, brushing off certain portions of the painting and starting over. When you're doing the drawing, my workflow is I've toned the canvas in a burnt sienna. From there, I'll typically make a mixture of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue and create a gradient of that of dark to light. From there, I will work in the darks, moving from dark to light and moving into the drawing. In the drawing, you basically want to punch in the dark values first. There's a lot of basic approaches to this, and if you take any beginning level oil painting class, they're going to talk about this. You want to get in the dark values. You want to find the contrast in the form and the shapes. And in this case, I'm painting a horse. This horse is Henry. He's a Palomino quarter horse, and I am looking for those shadows that exist, in this case, around his neck and the side of his face, his belly, and his hindquarters. And so that dark area, the darks are going to define the light and the values and the interplay between the two of them. And you're just going to want to work from there. Okay. So slowly, working that up. You can there's a lot of different methods. There's sight size, which is, I could do an entire video on that, how that works, but that's essentially whenever you're using a portion of your brush to measure distances. You can use it, for example, between, the eye and the nose, or the eye and the mouth if you're doing a portrait. If you're doing a figure, a lot of times you'll line up maybe a portion of the head to the bottom of the hand, or, it's basically you're looking for geometry. You're looking for shapes within the environment that you can draw upon. It's essentially like when you're doing a survey work, right? You'll place a stake in the ground, laser pointer, and you're connecting two dots, and it's geometry. And that's what you're doing when you're measuring proportions when you're working. Here I'm just mixing some paint, trying to find the values. So I'm working to try to find the value that exists, and you're going to want to go from dark to light on this as well. And so that shadow, it's kind of hard to tell with the resolution in my video here, but that shadow was a mixture of, it's very gray. It also has some blues in there and greens. So it's going to be some combination of all that. And the thing you have to remember with oil paint is you're layering, and all of those layers are going to be transparent, and you're going to be able to view all of those transparent colors once it's finished. Let's talk about color palette for a second. Today I'm using a color palette consisting of primarily red and green. And I came up with those colors by using yellow ochre and ivory black to get a green base. I'm using ivory black and cadmium red to get a dark red or crimson base. And then I also have titanium white on my palette and ultramarine blue. And with those colors, I'm able to get a range of color. And you always want to mix your paint before you apply it to your canvas. And you want to think of it as essentially sculpting. You're sculpting the image that's in front of you, because you want this to look three-dimensional. And the way of doing that is, again, keep in mind, you're using oil paint. In oil paint, you have the benefit of layering and getting these glazes. And the paint, obviously some paints are more opaque, some are more transparent. But basically, these layers are going to be showing through each other. And in this case, Henry, if you look at his hind end there, he's got there's a lot of different colors going on there. It can kind of trip you up. Painting a white horse can actually be quite challenging, and I encourage everybody to do it, because if you're interested in whites and white values, you can see there in the reference photo, there's a lot of different white values happening, and you can get creative, and all those relationships are going to, they're all going to be different. In this case, you're probably wondering why I'm putting down kind of like a reddish value there, and I'm wanting this to show through. So while once I'm finished with the painting, hopefully he's not going to look that red, right? But what I'm doing is I'm putting in those layers, because I'm building up on this, and I want that to show through ultimately the more white values towards the end. Don't be afraid to So here you can see the subtle shifts in blues, grays, and yellows, and I'm managing this all in kind of tangentially, side by side. This right here, what I've done is it's actually too green. So I'm gonna go back and mute this down a little bit, and I've kind of mixed up this bluish gray to hopefully manage some of that green to make it a little bit more blue. And don't be afraid to really layer that paint on. Now I want to talk about brushwork a little bit and why it's important. What does it mean? And staying loose, obviously. A lot of us will look at these great painters like Sargent, and we see that loose brushwork and broken color and abstract, and we want to paint like that. And one thing I found helps me is practicing, doing exercises, doing drills. So that's where you can get out like what I'm doing here. I just have a loose canvas. You can buy this at any art store pretty much. It's relatively pretty cheap. This is a 12 by 16, and you can be afraid to make mistakes. Give yourself the grace and the patience to just have fun and make mistakes. And you're going to want to do this a lot. One pitfall artists fall into a lot is they bust out a brand new canvas and they're like, I'm going to make the greatest painting, and it starts out good. And of course it starts falling apart. And one way you can combat this is by just doing fun drills. Get out this cheap canvas that you don't care about. I don't care if I'm going to make a bad painting. Go out and take a picture of your dog or your horse. Get a good reference photo. Get a cheap canvas surface to work on. And now you can start cooking, and you can say, okay, I'm just going to start throwing paint down, and I'm going to be loose with my brush. And there is order to this. It's not complete chaos, but you want to be deliberate. And so, mixing your paint, let me back up. So getting your drawing down, you've got your drawing down, you've got the form, you've got the values, you've got the skeleton built to your painting. Now you can be a little bit more loose. You can be a little bit more abstract because you've kind of solved the math problem, essentially. Value does all the work, color gets the credit. So value is certainly the most important thing in a painting. And I say all this just to get to brushwork. So brushwork is about really being deliberate. If you look at John Singer Sargent, he was deliberate. He put paint down and he committed to it. And, that's essentially what I'm trying to do here with this painting of Henry. I'm not trying to make a great painting. I'm just trying to throw paint down and get a nice impressionistic representation of the horse. And by doing that, I think a lot of times artists talk about their style. They're trying to find their style as an artist. That is essentially where the style comes through. It's after you've essentially exhausted all these other fundamentals of painting. You've mastered the form, the geometry, the values. You've mixed your color right, and these are all things that are grounded in reality. And painting is essentially a magic trick, and the best magic tricks have some truth in them, and they are grounded in some way to truth. And it's the same with painting. A great painting has to be, in my opinion, grounded in some form of reality. And you can begin to explore, this is something you can explore your entire life, and it's fun. And if you're passionate enough about it, it'll open doors to other universes. But it's really just about understanding how important it is to get those fundamentals in. Make sure you understand how light behaves and study it. If you a lot of us work and have jobs, and painting's just a hobby or whatever, but if you had the opportunity to study art in an academic setting, in an art atelier, I encourage you to do that. There's a lot of great ateliers around the country, and some of the most basic things they're going to have you do is just still lifes. And a lot of the times people find that boring, but you have to find the beauty in those things and how light reflects off of objects. And I'm kind of rambling here, but yeah, essentially you're searching for something, right? When you're painting a language, you're trying to tell a story through form and color, and brushwork will do that. I think that's really important. Brushwork, I think, probably not one of the first things you'd want to study. You'd want to study form and values. I get sloppy all the time with my painting, and I'll have to go back and just draw. I will commit to just drawing for weeks on end. I'm not going to touch a paintbrush, and it's important to do that because drawing will ingrain that into your mind. It'll help you look for those values. And you can also do this with painting. It's called grisaille, and you can Google it and you can look at all the different techniques there are for grisaille. And it's basically painting with black and white. You're creating a grayscale values. Typically, you want to start with about 5 different values from black to white. And you can start with a simple object. You can put a ball in front of you with the proper lighting. I think they call it 3/4 lighting. You want something with a lot of contrast so then you can see how forms turn in front of your eyes. And a lot of these optical illusions, you become master of optical illusions. And that's what the great painters did. They all did that. If you study the greatest painters, they were masters of the turning of the form and optical illusions. And because at the end of the day, we're just putting paint on a freaking canvas. That's all we're doing. But how do you do that? And yeah, so that's just, I think I'm just going to stop there. But yeah, that's all stuff to think about, all things you want to explore. So loose brushwork, people love to talk about it, and so do I, because it's beautiful. It's great when you see it, but it's not everything, and you got to start somewhere. And if I was going to suggest to start somewhere, it would be with the drawing and the values. But hopefully, this quick demo or study I've done today can kind of demonstrate a little bit about loose brushwork and how, applying the paint, I'm just kind of applying it in very abstract shapes. I'm trying to look at the subtle, color shifts within the form. And I'm just putting it down and I'm wiping my brush, putting it down and wiping my brush, because I also want to be careful. I want those different colors to show through next to each other. If it's a very, very light purple next to a gold, next to a pink, I want those to all float around next to each other within the form. But wiping that brush makes sure that those paint layers are going down separately, and I'm not mixing my colors together, and then that's where you kind of get a more muddy feel. And so yeah, just be cognizant of that whenever you're trying to achieve loose brushwork. I would say that was my biggest pitfall was, wiping my brush. I think if you're going to paint with loose brushwork, that's great. Maybe you have multiple brushes and maybe wipe your brush so that way they're not all mixing together. And ultimately, just try to have fun. Try to go out and make a bad painting like I'm doing here. I'm not trying to make a painting to sell here. I'm not trying to make something that's going to go in a gallery or a museum. And by committing to making a bad painting in the beginning, there's going to be less pressure. That pressure is going to be taken off of you. And it's going to allow you to explore more and get back to the roots of why you enjoy painting. And that's a really good exercise for loose brushwork and even maybe mix up some color and take your brush and look at how those brush strokes, just on a blank canvas, just place those brush strokes next to each other and see how they look. See what the relationships look like between the paint and if it's pleasing or if the color harmony is working. And it'll tell you a lot about your process. And just like anything, the more you do this, whether it's working on values or loose brushwork or drawing, it's going to become second nature. So when it does come time to execute, you're going to do 1,000 times better. Well, I hope you like this video. I hope you like this quick demonstration. This bad painting I did of Henry, the quarter horse. He's a Palomino with all these different white colors going on. I hope it inspires you to go out and make a bad painting and just have fun and just try to throw some paint on, but in a controlled, chaotic way, right? So it's controlled chaos. You want to get those fundamentals and then go out and have a good time. If you want to see more of these, hit the like button. Leave me some feedback. If you're an art collector or somebody that's purchased my art, I'd love to hear from you as well. If you're interested in more of my art, you can head over to my website, liammatthew.com. You can purchase artwork there. You can sign up for my newsletter. If you're an artist and you just want to talk about art, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. I love researching art and art history, and look forward to doing some more of these in the future.